There you are. Good morning. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about training. Hey, folks, I jumped in live this morning. Today, we're going out to Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. And if you're with me, if you're joining this, if you're seeing this, jump into the comments, tell me who you are, where you're from. And if you've got a comment, any kind of enlightenment about today's subject, I would love to hear about it. Now, I've got a class I'm teaching at the top of the hour today. So I don't have a ton of time here, but I did want to get this out. So I'm kind of asking, I'm coming to you now and I'm saying, hey, what is the aversion? What is the what is the reluctance? What's the root cause for why corporations or small businesses or organizations, why do they resent the idea of training? Now, I say that and you go, I don't resent training. I don't resent training. I think training is wonderful. No, people don't. If people thought training was wonderful, there would be a wealth of it. And here's where I'm going with this. You see, I run my own agency. I run Mañana No Mas agency. And when I have processes that I do running my agency, I take a moment and I screen record it and I make it into a lesson. And I put that in the back end of my website in a course that I have that's how Mañana No Mas works. And so when I hire somebody to the agency, I don't have to spend a bunch of time training them or onboarding them or doing different things. I say, hey, I'm going to add you as a student to this course right here. In this course, these elements, this section is about the task I've hired you to do. This section is about the task I've hired you to do. And in a lot of cases, I make this training content with my son as I am onboarding my son along in the process so he can understand, how does dad generate revenue for the family? And is this something that he would want to do after dad gets hit by a bus or falls down with a stroke? Simple, right? So I'm all in. I am all in. Now, I love the idea. Like, I've written books, I've written courses. I was a training manager at Ducati. I was the training manager at Suzuki. I worked with BRP on some projects. Indian was a project that I had done. So when I think about the amount of content that I've been able to contribute to, obviously, I am into training. Now, let me tell you the perspective of training from the corporate position. When it came to prioritize budget, training is almost always dead last. Sales typically gets the lion's share of whatever the budget is for whatever company it is, because there's always this idea that sales generates our income, sales generates our budgets. If sales are up, our budgets are up, right? So in the corporate mind, sales gets the lion's share of budget to spend. And then there's like inventory kind of counts in there a little bit, right? Maybe that's part of sales. And then you get into the after sales arena, like with service and stuff like that. Service would generally get less than sales to play with. A perfect example of this is, let's say there is a meeting of service managers for any industry, right? That meeting of service managers in any industry is probably going to order pizza or sandwiches or a deli for their catering. Whereas if it was the sales team going out to a similar training experience, their meal would probably be out somewhere, sitting down at a table and having sushi or pasta, or, pasta with wine or something along those areas. So what I'm saying is, the experience, the life experience from someone in after sales to somebody in sales is markedly different. For example, when I worked for Suzuki, there was the difference between sales and service in the way that people got treated in those areas. The lion's share of the budget went to sales. The second part of the budget went to service. But beyond that, there was also the levels of the company. And so Marine got the lion's share of the budget and power sports got the leftovers. So now imagine you're after sales and power sports, because you get top priority Marine sales, second priority Marine service, third priority power sports sales, fourth priority power sports after sales, And now all the way at the bottom here is training. And training at Suzuki served both verticals. So training was the bottom, the least amount of budget, quite honestly, for the highest level of accountability, because everything has to be just right. You can't put out the wrong information and have technicians do the wrong thing in the field and blow up a bunch of people's cars, motorcycles, or boats. That all said, I'm coming to you, and I want to look at this from two positions. Okay, one position is you're the boss, you're the VP, you're somebody at the top of a corporate structure, and you have to make the decision to invest in training the staff or the field. Okay, so what is it that makes you reluctant to invest in the training that's going to put your message out to the masses and give you the support you need from the ground up to elevate the whole thing? What makes people hesitant to invest in training in that way? Here's a great example. I own the Power Sport Academy. The Power Sport Academy helps dealers improve their parts and labor sales and the relationships between service and the customer and service and the other department heads. And so we work on this internal culture feature quite a bit, and we also work on the actual sales and revenue generation of that department. So I'm kind of dumbfounded as to why there's not more dealerships saying, this sounds like a no-brainer. I'm going to sign up. I'm going to pay this much for training, and I'm going to make this much more in revenue. This is not risky at all. This is, why wouldn't we do this? But there's the commitment to do the training once you commit to the training. That's the next part of the question. So the first part of the question was, what makes business owners, managers, vice presidents reluctant to invest in providing the training? Okay. The next part of the question is, what makes the student, whoever the student is, whoever's been assigned to take the training, what makes the student so stinking reluctant to follow the training, to complete the training, to at least experiment with what is discussed in the training? A perfect example of this, I can give you one right off the bat. I was visiting a dealership, and I think I've talked about this live a couple of times. The batteries that they were storing to put in people's personal watercraft, UTVs, and motorcycles, the batteries were all stored in a haphazard kind of way. They weren't very well organized. They weren't pre-serviced. They weren't pre-charged. They weren't ready to go. So when sales would sell something, they would bring that unit back to service, and service would have to PDI it, which is called pre-delivery inspection. And that's where, hey, does it have oil? Is the battery charged? Does it have fuel in it? Does the steering work? Are there any loose bolts or anything hanging off? Do we have to retorque the axle nuts? Anything like that. So there's a checklist of things to do. One of those, of course, is to service, charge, and install a battery. Well, to properly service and charge a battery, it takes 12 to 24 hours. Okay. So the idea that sales would sell something and think it's going to be delivered in 3 hours is already off the realm. It's already not part of reality. Okay. Because you didn't prepare properly. And so in one instance, I went to a dealership and I saw this with the batteries, and I said, hey, we've got a couple of issues. One, warranty is not going to cover these batteries when they don't hold up. If you don't service these correctly and you don't install these correctly, you're going to have customers come back that need battery replacements in less than a year. And you're going to think that warranty is going to pay for that, but warranty is not going to cover that, because the company is going to know you didn't service those batteries properly, or they wouldn't have gone bad so quickly. And so hazardous waste, batteries, you go through the whole thing, right? So we just need to do this right. If you got a bigger battery rack and a commercial battery charger with multiple channels, you would be able to pre-service and pre-charge one of each battery and have them organized, like the milk in a grocery store, right? You take the first gallon of milk out, the rest of the milk slides forward, right? So you would take that battery out, the batteries would slide forward, and you would service that next battery in line, get it on the charger, and then install that charged battery into the unit and deliver that unit right away without having to wait 12 or 24 hours, Sales is happy, service is happy, the customer is happy, and everything happens much more quickly, right? So that's something that came up through training. So we had that discussion and I priced it out for him. Here's the racks you need. Here's the charger you need. This is going to cost you about $3,000. And they said, well, $3,000, that's a lot of money. And I said, well, it's $3,000. Like, you're selling vehicles that cost $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. Okay. So I'm talking about $3,000. Let's see what changing this out is going to generate for you. And then we were able to determine that going to this new way of storing batteries at this facility would create for them a parts and labor opportunity of $48,000 a year. So you're going to spend $3,000 and you're going to have the possibility to generate another $48,000 in parts and labor for the year. A month later, no battery rack. 2 months later, no battery rack. 4 months later, no battery rack. A year later, they're out of business. Not because of the battery rack, but because of a compounding of all of these types of issues. So there were multiple things that we had trained that never got implemented. There were multiple things that I know other people had advised them on that didn't get implemented. And so my question is, what's the aversion to training? What is it about us that A, doesn't see the value in producing the training in the first place, and B, doesn't see the value in taking, following, or making it happen through training? And I put notes in this live. If you're looking at the post that it's in, you'll see a note down there. Is it a personal pride issue? Is it like you don't want to admit you were wrong, or there's too much accountability? Like if it's in writing, you don't want to be held accountable for it? Is it a cost benefit analysis? Because cost benefit analysis is always going to say training's the way to go. I got to go soon, but we've got a comment rolling in. Mr. Penzer Dragon, here he is. Interest rate is a villain. Interest rate is a villain. Think about what that did to the housing market. Think about what it does to any kind of premium vehicle. Like, let's say that you used to be able to think about buying a new Mercedes. Well, now you're thinking about buying a new Nissan. If you used to think about buying a new Nissan, now you're thinking about buying a Kia. Then you go to the Kia dealership and you realize Kias are now $50,000. And you go, okay, crap, now I got to go back to the Honda dealer. Honda's not exactly cheap either. So you just keep downplaying your choices based on interest and payments, right? So, there we go. I got a 5-minute warning. Okay. So before I dive into class and teach this class in the marine industry, how to increase their marine business, I really wanted to hit this. I'm hoping that people watch the replay on this and have some comments or have some thoughts on what the aversion is to this training idea. You know, like I said, is it the accountability? Is it the, oh man, if I have a course created and I want to teach everybody how to do this process, I got to make sure this process is right. You know, so I could see that being one thing, right? I don't want to be held accountable. I want to have the freedom to change my mind later. Well, you can always update the training. It's not a problem. In today's world of producing video content at the drop of a hat, it's super easy to do a screen share or to take a quick video of something and plug that into a course or lesson type structure to educate others. And so I get really confused at the corporate enterprise level why that doesn't happen more often. But the other side of the coin, like I just said, is when the training is provided and it's obvious there's a benefit to the training, what prevents people from taking action with that training? That's something I just can't wrap my head around. Time and time again, I will go to someone and say, if you just do this thing, you're going to make an extra 10 grand. If you just do this thing, you're going to make an extra $30,000. If you just do this thing, you're going to be able to hire 2 more people and increase your efficiency for your shop by this much percent, which will drive your margins by this many dollars. And it's like the lights aren't on. It's like they don't believe you. Or sometimes worse than that, they shine you on and they go, oh, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And then a month later, 6 weeks later, 2 months later, half a year later, nothing, no changes, nothing happens. And I'm hoping that somebody's going to jump in and say, hey, I have this idea, or this is what I experienced at my company, or this is why we didn't. And maybe that'll give me a different perspective. Because as the person that creates training material and has an agency that creates learning sites for other people, I have to ask, it's never been cheaper. It's never been easier to put learning content out for your people. So knowing how affordable it is, it's really difficult for me to understand why you wouldn't invest in that way. I have a friend that runs a networking organization, and they're bringing in all these different marketing people to this network. And the problem is that people that join this network don't really understand how the network was engineered. They don't understand what the root cause of the network is. And I keep saying, let's just make a quick training course. Let's just make a quick onboarding course. Let's just say a welcome to the network course, and people can take that and then get to the next phase of membership. Like they join, they have to take this course. When they finish this quick course, it could be a 15, 20-minute course. They take that course, boom, they get elevated, they get tagged in the system and move and have, exposure to the rest of the people of the network. And he always goes, that's a great idea, but we never do it. And I'm really curious for feedback from you on why that never happens. Because if it's something I can overcome and increase my business, I'm going to do that. Mr. Panzer says large companies can't seem to see the ROI. That's true because they're spending all their money on sales, right? Like I said earlier, they prioritize the sales department, then the after sales department, and lastly is training. Whereas if they were to reprioritize training a little higher, they would see that benefit across both other divisions. Deer in the headlights. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That deer in the headlights. And management has to pull multiple strings to get the training needed for their team. You ain't lying. And there's tons of training out there, but it's also easy to make the training direct for yourself. And folks, with that, I am at the top of the hour. I've got to go run a class. How about that? I'm going to flash you my thanks for watching thing, and I'll see you next time. Mr. Dragoon, have yourself a wonderful day.